Alright, I figured I'd make a quick video since I've got to change out one of my boards. But if you want to change the version of DOC, this is your main board right here. A multi-stack or a multi-board is what they call it. You're going to need two DOC carts because really all we're doing is changing out this board with the board that's inside. It doesn't have the cover like the regular Naomi games. So you'll have to take that off. I already took a couple screws out to make it quicker, but you'll need screwdrivers. They say don't use power tools. I'm lazy, so I'll use it, but I've got another screwdriver just in case I run into issues. But you're going to take these two screws out. Again, I removed them already. Those two screws on the back of the cart. And just to give you a look at this, try not to break it. This is what it looks like. Okay, so that's what we're going to be changing out. I'm just going to set those off to the side because you're going to see I'm going to want those covers here in a second. So you may have 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't usually put them all in because I change these things out so often. But I like to keep my screws and stuff. I mean, there's a couple steps, so I like to do it in order, just so that I know when I'm putting it back together. So this just slides right off. This is just the cover. Sometimes it's a little finicky. I bent a couple of these going too fast in the past, but just slides off, up and off. And you'll have these little stickers on there, which will probably tell you what revision this is. And again, I've changed mine off so much I just rewrite over the top, but that's a nice piece of info if you're not sure which version you're running. And so this is the multi-board stack. Kind of turn it a little bit so you get a better view. It's essentially here in this cage. And what we're going to be removing first are these little feet, right? So some of them might not be all the way put in. You might be missing these brackets over the top, but that's the first thing we're going to be removing, because you'll see here in a second, this whole multi-board is going to slide out of the filter board, which the filter board is this little faceplate right here. Okay. So these little feet come off. It's just kind of what holds everything in there. I'm going to set those off to the side. All right. Now you're going to see these little metal pieces here. I use this for leverage, and you just pull back. Okay? Pull straight back towards you, and these pieces disconnect from the filter board. Right there. Again, filter board. Right there. So I'm going to set that off to the side. All right. So you have your multi-board stack, and you can see right on top, that's the same thing as this guy. These are the exact same thing. Underneath it is, and I don't have one, but you know when you set the game in, you have that communication board, which is that little lip that holds the cart over the top of the Naomi. That's this little board right here. So it's plugged in just like it sits in the Naomi, and this is the actual Naomi, the inside. If you were to take off that case, this is a Naomi. So you have one Naomi, you have the communication board, and you have the ROM cart right on the top. So, and again, this is a multi-board, so you have one unit here, you've got one unit on the bottom, and then you have this intermediary board here in the middle, which isn't part of, anywhere else other than the multi-board. So that kind of, you sandwich everything together, and that's what you're dealing with. So you can see, sometimes I don't put these all the way down because again, I do this so often. If you run into issues, you can hold up or hold pressure underneath where that screw goes, because these are actually supposed to seat all the way down. That's why the screws are so long. So we'll get all 4 of those out. You may have 6. You may have 2. You can see, I think my drill might be going out, but we'll hope that we work. So I'm going to lay those off to the side. And I'm just going to take this first part off so you can see. Just put a little pressure on the Naomi and pull up on the carts, because again, all these things are really clipping together. So this is that game cart right here. And this is the communication cart. So again, they stack right into each other and they stack right on the Naomi. If you got a question about what BIOS you're running, that's this chip right here. So I've really only seen G, unless I'm working with a Japanese version. So this, I believe, is Rev D. So if you ever have problems with your BIOS on your Naomi, so any one of those satellites or even in here, this is what they mean by the BIOS. And this battery here, you're going to want to change this battery when you're changing out these games. If you're ever having any issues where your game isn't keeping track of which race is next after you turn it off and turn it on, or your scores don't hold, 9 times out of 10 it's this battery right here. It's a 2032. Get them at Safeway or Walmart, or I don't think they have Radio Shack anymore, but any place that sells batteries. 2032, it's like a flat battery. So, just kind of pry it up a little bit very gently, and then it just kind of slides back in. So anyway, we have one game card out. So I'm going to go ahead while I'm at this step and change the game. So take it out of the cartridge. I'm going to pull these together. Again, just put a little pressure on the bottom. You can lift up. Okay. This is the game card. This is the communication. So you're going to see these little feet here. You're going to want to change these little feet out from one board to the next. They just screw or pull. They just pull straight back, just a little bit of pressure, because you're going to be recreating what you had here. Don't want it to be overwhelming, but you're going to need those channels for your screws to go through. So pop all 6 of those off. Again, we're putting them in the little corners, so we're filling those little holes, taking it from one board to the other. Two left. All right, last one. So we now have all of those little plastic clips in our new board. I'm going to move the old one out of the way, because I will put it back together with this cart. And then the game, you can tell it's got this little chip here. It says EPR 22336, and then whatever version you are is the letter afterwards. And then it just goes right back on top. There's only one way to put it, because you got 2 on one side, 1 on the other. I'm talking about those white channels. And then just click it together. Just a little bit of pressure. one. Okay? All right. And then I'm going to put it back on the Naomi just for convenience. And again, 2 channels to the right, goes right on top, and I'm going to seat it back in my Naomi. Now I would change the battery, as I mentioned, in the Naomi right here at this step, because those things go bad. 25-year-old game or however old. So I would change that, but I've already changed it on this one. So, all right, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out these little screws on the feet. You're going to see these little black feet, and you're not going to be able to get to these until a later step. But I'm going to start by taking these little feet out. Just gives me something easy to work with. I'm going to pause this video because I've got to get another battery. Hopefully I charged up the other one. All right, I'm back. More power. So again, taking out the little black feet. These little screws that are holding this full board thing in place. And again, it's going to be hard to get to a few of them. Setting those out. I like to set my stuff in order so I know what I'm coming back to. All right, the next thing I think I'm going to do is take off these front screws. These right here. It's going to release this piece of the cage. And the cage is what this top Naomi mounts down into. There's 3 screws here. Okay. And this cage just comes right off. That's all it is. Again, these mount to the Naomi. These mount to the front of this metal piece of the base. So we'll put that right there. Put the cart out of the way. All right, and then I'm going to remove the remaining 3 screws from those black feet. Got those other 3 feet off. The board should come up a little bit. I'm going to come into these 2 screws holding the bottom Naomi in. I'm sorry, the intermediary board, the board in the middle. These 2 inner screws. Because I should then be able to do something. And I like to put these back in there so I remember where they came from. All right, got those 2. And then now we're going to be taking away these big screws right here. So these screws, you can see these clips, they hold multiple boards in place. So that's the next one that we're taking out. There's a couple levels to this, but these are going to be longer screws. Okay, just slide it right back in there. should be able to now release the Naomi and the two games all at once. Put this down. Okay. And again, this is just one Naomi. So I pull that up off of the intermediary board. So this is that intermediary board. It connects. This is really what connects the two Naomis together to give it that extra processing power. So I'm going to put this Naomi over here. And then these are what we're going after next. These little black, you're going to see when they come out, they mount the middle board to the bottom Naomi. And then the other pieces screw right into the top, as you can see there. So I'm going to start with these two screws here on the end. And I got ahead of myself. These are the long ones. Okay, because they mount this right into the metal piece right there. So now you should be able to wiggle these guys out. Okay. Put those screws back inside. Okay. Now we're going after these guys. When these guys come out, and that one came out kind of quick because it's on the end, I like to pop these screws back in so I know where they go. But it just goes just like this. Holds up under there. This one just slides out. Okay. Okay, second one. And then the last one. Up. They go like that, they come out like that. All right. Now we'll be able to lift off this intermediary board. Okay, that comes off. That's all that baby is right there. I'm going to set that over here. Hopefully it doesn't fall. And then you have one Naomi sitting here. Now because I took off the screws to the bottom, all I need to do is flip it over. So you can see this is the BIOS, this is that second battery, this is the Naomi. So what's inside the Naomi case that's in all of your satellites, just without the cover. That's what it looks like. I changed out the battery already. And I've got the BIOS, and then you flip it over again, and you have one little card. Another one of these card guys. That's your other Naomi game, their DOC game. So you can see Rev D. It says D right there. It'll also say the Rev there on most of the cards that I've seen. So we're changing this one out, just like we did the last one. I'm going to put this back down. I'm going to take off these 6 feet. Just like we did one of the first steps. Sometimes these guys are a little stubborn. Lost one. Get that in a second. Okay, you got them all. Find out where that one that I dropped went. Alright, so put in this other game over there, and then again, you remove the screws, which I already did earlier, from there, and you can pop the card off. And we just put these babies back on. Small one goes in the top, the big one goes in the bottom. There's really only one way you can put the longer ones in the bottom, because if it doesn't snap together, it's upside down. So I got 3 in. Alright, got the last one in. Now we're going to go backwards. I think I'm going to stop the video here, because I think I'll do 2 videos. So I'm going to stop it here, and then I'm going to go through and put it all back together in another video. Alright, if you're with me this far, we're going to start reassembling your DOC main board. So where we left, we got our cart here. We've already changed it out. We've taken it from the ones that we've got. And again, this card, this DOC ROM cart, the game cart, snaps into the bottom of the DOC. There's really only one way for it to go. Put a little pressure on those 2 channels, and then we're going to start rebuilding this thing back up. Alright, now even after I've done this a million times, sometimes I misassemble things. But what I'm going to do now is just make sure that I've got these little guys lined up. Alright, now I'm going to take a couple of my screws, and I'm going to remount these feet in there, the plastic ones. So I've got 3. So pick up these 3 screws, and they're shorter type screws, you'll see. I think it was quarter 4 or so that we took these out on the other side. But line up the hole, and then lock those guys in place, because it's easier to work with when that thing is stable on the bottom. Okay. And I'll get those 3 guys. Okay, should have some stability now. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 2 brackets here, because they hold these boards together. I'm going to slide it. You're going to see like the holes over here, and then there's like a little lip. I'm going to slide that over. Okay, because that's going to make that piece stable. And then I'm going to lock those feet into place. Okay. Grab a couple of those little guys. Make sure that wasn't me stopping. I got an email. We're gonna mount these guys in. twist them a little bit, make sure that they are lined up. We should be good there. I'm going to leave these long skinny ones out until we put the intermediary board back in. So here we go. This is the piece that always throws me off. How to put this guy in. So you're going to see me twist it around a couple times until I figure out exactly what the orientation is. But it should look like this, because this guy is going to slide into these little lips. That's why I do that step there, so I know which way it goes, because I've spent a lot of time figuring it out. So you're going to have two channels here on the left side. I'm going to plug into these two top on the nail. A little sun in my eyes, so it's making this thing even more difficult. Okay. And then just put a little bit of pressure to make sure that you get that thing connected. There we go. And of course, I didn't slide it into my guys there. So there we go. And then I'll redo that one. See, there's an art to this. And I'm obviously not much of an artist. Okay, and then push them back down in. Boom. Got it seated. There. Make sure those things are lined up. Then I'm going to pop these screws back into these guys here. Should go all the way down, so you might have to twist those little black guys a little bit. These little legs. And we're going to screw these guys back in. These are long screws because they are mounting this whole thing into the bottom metal bracket base. Okay. Now you know why I don't use a regular screwdriver. My forearms will be dead at the end of this. Okay. Where we're at now. Now we need to give ourselves these black brackets here. We got to slide them in. So this is why I like to put the screws in there. And it just kind of goes in like that, opposite of the way that we took it out. There we go. And it should line up with those holes that you got. Do that for all of them here. Under. Line them up. Throw those guys in there. Okay, got one more. I'm going to screw these guys down. I'm not going to put them all the way down because this board will flex if you ratchet them down all the way. I want it to be pretty solid on there just to hold this stuff in place. Otherwise, people tell you not to use power tools. You can really ratchet these things down so much that they have a little bit of bend in them. And you'll see the board kind of go down. Pretty good. I'm going to look at it. A little bit of flex, but it's solid in there, which is good. All right, the next step is, where is my little bracket guy? 1, 2, 3. Okay. And I'm going to put on this little bracket, just like we took off, and it's going to kind of hover there a little bit during this step, but you'll see why I do this now. And it's these little guys. Got that little washer on there. And you may have different screws because as these things get serviced, you know, people enact shortcuts. It's not going in. Just having an alignment issue. Some performance anxiety probably. Something like that. Just had to put a little pressure on the back. But as I was saying, people that are doing service on these will give themselves like little shortcuts, because this is one of probably a handful of ways that you can disassemble or reassemble this thing. And if somebody knows that they're going to be working on it a lot, save themselves some time. So we got that bracket on. Now this bracket is going to hold this other Naomi that we already converted. All right. Now we're gonna figure out our alignments. Like this. And one easy way to tell for me is that filter board has 4 connections into it. So that's where we were. We have these 2 guys, and you can see you're gonna slide it forward. So I know it has to have those other connections in there. Give myself a little, okay, lock everything into place. Now we're just going to reassemble. I've got one of these guys, this little bracket, which is going to go here on the end. So this one, another one of these black brackets, it's going to hold this corner board up. So I mean, I'm sorry, this one right here, because it's got 2 lips in it, and those 2 lips stabilize both of those boards. And then that screw, this is the one that I took out, I thought it was a long one, just goes right back in. Okay, and then I've got the bottom foot to put it in. Okay, nice and tight there. All right, I've got my other 2 feet here, and I'm just going to look to see where I'm missing feet. Unscrew these guys. And I'm missing here and here. So underneath, screws into the board, and then the bottom screws into the base. So we'll do the board first. I'm going to go do the other side. And I'll probably put that in a little bit too tight, because I'm going to have to loosen it to move the foot around to make sure that hole lines up in the base. But skillful than I am at this. And don't be overwhelmed. I know this kind of seems like a very scary thing to do. But, you know, the first time I did it, and I think I helped somebody from the community get through it, only through pictures, not through a video. But when you plug it back up and you see something funny, like this board is not accepted, or one of those Naomi errors that don't really give you a lot of information, it usually means that we didn't push things tight enough. So if you take your time when you're doing this and make sure that all of these boards are seated into each other. I don't know if you've ever tried to put a Naomi cart into the top of a Naomi without putting the screws in. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Throws errors until you pop those screws in. Same thing applies here. Make sure that you get everything in and connected so that you don't have any errors. Long screws go back in, and again, we're putting them into the top. So this was our first step. And mine are a little bit funny. As you're going to see, I probably won't put them all the way down. Just because whoever had this before maybe forgot some screws or lost some screws. But so this is facing me, but I'm going to put it facing you. These screws go all the way through. So sometimes when you're screwing them back in, it feels like it's not going to go anywhere. Put a little bit of tension with your finger underneath here so that that screw locks into what you're mounting it to. Okay. And I just usually, that's a middle one. I remember with this board, I've got to pick and choose my battles here, which screw I want to put it in. I like them in the corners, but you know, we'll just roll with it. I am one of those guys who tries to simplify my process. The next time, and then I forget putting the screws in, but the littler ones are in the middle. All right, this one will probably go down a little bit more. Okay. This one will probably go down a little bit more. And it's really those same screws that you put, minus the middle ones of course, that you put in your game when you have those screws that need to go in. So there we have it. We have completely put together the board. Now, we're going to finalize. There's the filter board again. There's our 4 connectors again. And I'm going to lay it right on top of those mounting brackets. And then I'm just going to push. Give a little pressure from behind. As you're connecting it right into your filter board. And then the brackets, I usually forget this step a lot of times, or I don't put these in all together when I'm changing stuff out so often. Just line up the holes, those brackets back on top, and then screw these guys back in. And then the last step, should have 2 screws remaining, or 4, or however many you have in the top, is to put this guy on top. kind of slides over the top. So it's all lined up. It just goes right back into place. Now your board may have, I like to label so I know, I always mess up on that ring, the fiber optic ring. So I have to like label which side it goes in to make it easier when I'm setting it back up. But that's pretty much it. You can update that little sticker there to what version you have in there if you have multiple ones, or if you just know, you know. But yeah, hopefully that wasn't too scary. Probably is the first time that you do it, but you do it enough and follow the steps. Hope this video is helpful for you, and good luck. If you have any issues, feel free to reach out. The community is really great. We'll help you if you need anything. All right, have a wonderful day.